So we started our 2022 Christmas Quilt-A-Long, and the first block was the Sawtooth Star, in which we learned various methods of making flying geese unit. Block number 2 will be the Wreath block, and this time around, it's all about the HSTs. Let's get this block started. So in block 1, we talked about different methods of making flying geese units. This time around, we'll take a look at various ways to make half-square triangles, or HSTs. We will look at making it 1 at a time, 2 at a time, and 8 at a time. And just like how we did in block 1, I will show different ways to construct the block and share my thoughts on which method is best suited for different situations. But first, let's talk about that center square. So before we get started constructing the block, well, let's talk about the block center. So just like in block number 1, that center square here measures 4.5 inches, or the unfinished size will be 4.5 inches. So the finished size will be 4 inches. Now, on this particular block, I do find that, well, the best look is when it's just a plain center. But should you choose to, you can experiment with that. Now, you'll see me construct this block in this video in which I used a print here. Again, it's not the best looking block, but for me, I just wanted to experiment with it. So whatever you put as the center, just know that it will become a focal point. So if you want to fussy cut a pattern out, or if you have a particular design that you want to highlight in this block, putting it in the center will draw attention to that. Now, in terms of the math, or what size square you need, the 1 at a time half-square triangle method is probably the easiest. Whatever unfinished sized half-square triangle you need, that is the size square you need to start with. And you need 2 of them for each half-square triangle. On the wrong side of one of the squares, draw a line corner to corner. Then put it right sides together with another square, and so on the diagonal line. Now you could also iron or finger press that diagonal line. Then trim a 1/4 inch away from the seam and press the seam allowances to one side or open, whichever you prefer. When done, your half-square triangle unit should measure exactly the same as the square you started out with. So one thing I like about this 1 at a time half-square triangle method is just the fact that there's not a whole lot of math involved. I mean, whatever size half-square triangle you need, you just cut 2 squares and sew on the diagonal line, do that stitch and flip, and in the end, you should have the same size that you originally started off with. The other thing that I do like about it is you can just get a variety of colors. Now, I chose to actually use the same gray here, and well, these two ended up almost being the same, but you can just imagine you can do a variety of colors, just depends on what fabric set you choose. But here's what I don't like. Yeah, it's these guys, the cutoffs, the waist. Now, of course, you can be creative with it and then just make smaller half-square triangles and build something out with that. Or if you're like me, this goes in your crumb bin. It's also not the fastest method, I would say, because, well, yeah, it does take quite some time. It's easy to sew, but I don't know if about speed or if it's really the most efficient way of doing it. So one of my favorite methods in making half-square triangles is what people call the 2 at a time half-square triangle method. 2 at a time half-square triangles. 2 at a time half-square triangles. Let's discover how we make this. Now, the math involved in making or doing the 2 at a time half-square triangle method is, well, very simple. whatever finished size half square triangle unit you need. Just add 1 inch. So we're going to go for a 2-inch half square triangle. 2 inch plus 1, you cut your square to 3 inches. So here, I have a whole ton of 3-inch squares in which we're going to use this to make some half square triangles. Now to do that, well, it's nothing new. We've been doing this for quite some time, and I'm not the only one that does this method, so trust me. You just draw the line on the wrong side of the fabric. Whoops. And I'll do it to a number of these. Now you can iron this line, you can finger press this line. I'm just using a pen here to draw the line so that you can actually see it on camera a little better. So we'll take this to the sewing machine. We're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that center line on both sides of the line. Okay. We'll put these, I'll match it right sides together. And let's get sewing our 2 at a time half square triangles. Okay. So again, we have these 3-inch squares. We put them right sides together. On the back of, or on the wrong side of one of the squares, we drew a diagonal line going from corner to corner. We took them to the sewing machine, sewed a 1/4 inch away from that center diagonal line. Now, well, you probably know this method already. We're going to cut them in half. So I can cut that one. And, well, let me see if I can do this. I'll cut both of them at the same time. Here. And I'll line this one up. Ooh, ruler is just long enough to do this. So I will trim both of them at the same time there. And for those of you who have been watching me for quite some time and you followed the Treasure Heart Creations 52 Weeks, 52 Block series, you know how I like to square up these half square triangles. So, but if you're brand new, watch this. I want these to finish at 2.5 inches. So put the 2.5 inch mark on the ruler here, as well as here, making sure that it meets up with that diagonal seam that I just sewed. Then I can trim here, and I can trim there. Turn it around, and I'm lining up the 2.5 inch line right there on the edge of the fabric, as well as looking here. Then I can trim off my dog ears. And now we have a 2.5 inch half square triangle. So one of the things that I like about this 2 at a time half square triangle method is, number one, well, you can make it as scrappy as you want. Now here I kind of chose somewhat of the same fabrics, but it's very easy to just kind of scrap it up and just get a whole bunch of half square or a whole bunch of squares of different color fabrics. And again, you can make different colored half square triangles. The other reason I like this method, well, it's not very difficult to do. The math is fairly simple. It's a pretty common method that gets covered by a lot of quilters, or even a lot of patterns will have this method incorporated in their instructions. Now, one of the big reasons why I don't like this method, it's not always pre-cut friendly. Now, notice I started with a 3-inch square to make these 2.5 inch half square triangles. And 3 inches, if I were to use this using a charm pack, yeah, not very friendly. I mean, I'd be wasting a lot of fabric just to get that 1 3-inch square, and I can't really do anything with the rest of that 1.5 inch, although I could throw it in my scrap bin. Now, the other reason why I don't like this method, well, I mean, you can make it quickly, but when you need tons of half square triangles. This method can be a little bit time consuming because you're only getting 2 out of every square. So when do I use this method? Well, if I need a lot of half square triangles and I need them to look scrappy, or I'm going to use different color fabrics, this is my method of choice. But if I need a lot of half square triangles that look pretty much the same, I'm going to go with this other method in which we're going to do the 8 at a time half square triangle method. So let's take a look at that. When I need a lot of half square triangles and I need them all to look the same, this is my go-to method of creating or constructing those half square triangles. It's commonly called the 8 at a time half square triangle method. Now, the math in terms of what size to cut your square, well, not really that complicating. Whatever your finished size half square triangle unit is, well, add 1 inch, then multiply it by 2. So in our case, we're looking for a 2-inch finished half square triangle. So adding 1 inch to that, that'll make it 3, but then multiplying it by 2, then you figure out that we need a 6-inch square. So that's what I have here. Okay, both of these squares are 6 inches big, and when we're all done, we're going to get a 2-inch half square triangle unit. That's the finished size. So with this method, we're going to draw on the back side or on the wrong side of one of the fabrics. We're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. And we're also going to draw a diagonal line going in the opposite corners. So we'll do that. Then we shall take this to the sewing machine, put both of these squares right sides together, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away from this diagonal line on both sides of that line. And we're also going to sew a 1/4 inch away from this diagonal line on both sides. Okay, so I took this to the sewing machine. Well, let me show it to you on this side because I know the black thread is a lot easier to see on camera. I sewed a 1/4 inch away from that center diagonal on both sides. And I did it this way and going this way. I'm going to flip it back over. So we're going to start cutting this, and we're going to cut it horizontally in half. So because this was a 6-inch square, half of that is 3 inches. So I have my 3-inch line right here. And what you want to look for is you want to make sure that when you cut it, it's going to go right through that center there, or at least somewhat close to it. So I'm going to cut this way, lift my ruler up. I'm going to just rotate this mat. Now, if you do have a Lazy Susan mat or one of those rotating mats, this is a good time to use it. And again, we're going to cut it horizontally right in half. Okay, and I can cut this diagonally right on the line that I drew. So I'll cut this, and I'll turn it the other way, and we're going to cut this diagonally as well. And in the end, what we'll get is 4 half square triangles. Or actually, what did I say? 4. 8 half square triangles. We'll press these and we'll trim these down. Now, I know some of you out there, or some of you experienced quilters out there, are going to say this. Well, you're not supposed to add just 1 inch. It's supposed to be 7/8 of an inch. Well, to that, I say this. You know, using that 7/8 of an inch measurement requires you to be a pretty precise quilter, which, moreover, Because I'm cutting it a little bit oversized, it gives me that wiggle room that I need to actually just trim the block down and make it the perfect size that I need it to be. So I know a lot of patterns and a lot of quilters will cut that square to X amount of inches plus the 7/8. If that's you, that's fine. But if you're like me and you don't have 100% accuracy, just go up to the next inch and cut it and trim it down later. I mean, 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, I mean, it's not that much wasted fabric, and I'd rather waste that little sliver than drive myself crazy trying to make a perfect half square triangle. So what I like about this 8 at a time half square triangle method is you get a bunch of half square triangles, and usually you need them to pretty much look the same. So if you're following a pattern, um, or if you are following or making a particular quilt block that's not exactly, or you don't want to make it scrappy, this is a great method to make a ton of half square triangles and make them look the same. What I don't like about this method is, again, I like the scrappy look, so you're not going to get that with this. And trust me, I've tried to come up with various ways and techniques of making this scrappy, but yeah, it didn't come out pretty. That's not to say that there is no method. You can try it, but if somebody knows of a method, hey, leave a comment down below. Well, it's not very pre-cut friendly, I would say. Well, I mean, of course, that just depends on what size half square triangle you need. Now, I'm using charm squares for this version of the quilt. Yeah, I couldn't use well, I could use a chime square, but not for this size half square triangle that we're going to go for. So in terms of being pre-cut friendly, well, it's kind of up in the air. Again, I guess it just depends on what size half square triangle you need for your block. Now, I am aware that there are other methods for creating half square triangles, but on this video, we're just going to focus in on these three. There was the 1 at a time, there was the 2 at a time, and now we just showed you the 8 at a time. So let's get to actually constructing these blocks. So I'm going to call this the patchwork method. And well, it's going to be the most scrappiest looking. So if that's what you're going to look, or if that's the look that you're going for, this is probably the method that you're going to want to do. Here I have my center, which this is a square that measures 4.5 inches. Now I specifically placed these fabrics here for a specific reason. And so when you see the block layout, you'll understand why. Now in this version, I am going to make a bow on the wreath. So to do that, here I have a flying geese unit, which you'll notice that the wings here match to these pieces here, so that when it goes into the block, you'll get that bow look. Now this flying geese unit here, it measures 2.5 by 4.5. Now, whatever construction method you choose to make your flying geese, that's your choice. In addition to these two units here, you're going to need a total of 8 2.5-inch squares, as well as 4 2.5 square triangle units. What's tricky about this particular block design or this particular method is the layout. So let's take a look at a few things about that. This is a design choice that you're going to have to decide on, because notice that I do have matching colors in certain spots here, here, as well as here. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you wanted to, you could just totally scrap it up and just mix the colors in any which way you want to. So I could have done something like, put that one there, put this one here, and then, no, I need to swap one here, here. So you can make it look totally scrappy, Or you can do a somewhat semi-matching design. I mean, the look or how you design this block is going to be up to you. Now, the challenge with it though is when you do it this scrappy and when you have these type of colors that just pop at you, sometimes when you sew it together, it might not come out the way you think it is, but hey, it's your block, it's your quilt, you make it how you want to make it. I just like this look in particular. So this is how I'm going to do it. Now you do it how you want to make it. Now here's the block that I made using this patchwork method. And what I like about the method is just the sheer fact that you get a variety of fabrics in this one block. But that can work for you, or it could also work against you. Because when you introduce this many fabrics, well, sometimes it doesn't look like a wreath. And that is the challenge that I found with this particular block. Part of the reason why it doesn't work or it may not look like a wreath is because I got fabrics that are of different values. And so when you have some that are darker than others, that can be a challenge to actually work with in terms of constructing this block. So be aware of that. Now, if I had chosen fabrics that were of similar value as this dark here, well, maybe it would work. That's something I would have yet to see. So maybe I'll experiment it on a future version of this block. Now this block is very pre-cut friendly because the basis of it is just 2.5-inch squares. So as long as you can get a whole bunch of 2.5-inch squares, you can make this block. Now you might be turning them into half square triangles, or you might be constructing a flying geese unit. But again, as long as you can make a 2.5-inch square out of the pre-cut, you can do this block. So I'm going to call this the bar method because, well, you're using rectangles or bars to actually construct this block. So let's take a look at what we need. So here I have my 4.5-inch square, and this will be the center of the block. And here I have a 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangles, and I got 4 of them of varying fabrics. Then I got 4 half square triangles, all measuring 2.5 inches. Okay, so the block layout, very, very simple. I'll start with the center here. I'll lay out the 4 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangles. The 2.5 or the half square triangles that are 2.5 inches will go in the corner. And there you have your block. Now, should you choose to, you can put a ribbon with the flying geese unit here, as well as snowballing the center square here with 2.5-inch squares, but let's just go simple on this one. So let's sew this block together. Now, what I like about this block or this particular method is that it's very quick. I mean, you just cut a few simple things, sew it together, boom, you're done. You can also use a lot of different fabrics. Now, I chose to go in this red color palette, but what if we actually mixed it up with greens and threw in a little bit of other whatever's in that charm pack? I mean, you can make it scrappy, essentially. It is very pre-cut friendly in that, again, I'm just using variants of 2.5 inches. So starting off with the bars or the rectangles, these were, again, 2.5 by 4.5-inch squares in which you could use a charm pack, which is what I used. You could also use jelly roll strips. You could even do this with using a 10-inch layer cake square. Very, very pre-cut friendly. The one thing, though, that I don't like about this method, let me think. I don't think I don't like anything about this method. I mean, it's quick, it's easy, you can get a scrappy look out of it, it's pre-cut friendly, it's also yardage friendly, by the way. I guess you can get variety, or a little bit more variety, if you play around with how you construct the center square. Now, I chose not to put a ribbon on this block. You could very well do that. The choice is yours. But yeah, I can't think of anything that I don't like about this method, so I'm going to make more of them. Some random person had sent me an email asking me, do I want to promote their product? Now, I would have considered it. Maybe not say yes, but I would have actually considered promoting their product had it been a quilting related product. But this company that was asking for some affiliation or some marketing, I mean, this is a health and fitness company. And I'm like, why are they reaching out to me? This channel is all about crafting, creating. Kind of made me think about what in the world this company was thinking reaching out to me to promote a health and fitness product. I mean, if the product came with the little broad shoulders, a nice big chest, I would definitely jump on board with that. But I could not understand what this person or what this company was thinking reaching out to me. Why would they even be interested, or why would they think that I'm a good fit to help them promote their product? And it kind of got me thinking, in today's modern world, there's so many things that are just automatically done. For example, how many of you have called a customer service hotline and you get that message of, for this, press 1, for that, press 2, para español, número 3. Yeah, how many of us have heard that before? Whatever happened to just plain and simply being able to pick up the phone, call a customer service, and actually talk to a human being? That's no longer available these days, sorry to say. But I think what bothered me the most about this email that I got, it just read like it was a mass email that got sent to a lot of people that were on YouTube. I'm in the space of crafting. I am in the space of just creating. And yet they're trying to market a health and fitness and wellness product. To me, that just kind of showed that they just didn't do their homework into understanding what I was about, what my channels or what this channel is about. And so that just kind of bothered me, or that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. It just kind of got me thinking that in this world of technology, I mean, don't get me wrong, technology is great. It's got a lot of benefits to it. But with all this communication devices and with all things like email, cell phones, YouTube, all these methods of communication, and yet still, I sort of feel like it's just becoming less and less personal. But I guess on the flip side with technology, I mean, it gives us various methods of communicating with each other. Case in point, some of you have joined in our monthly Zoom call, in which we've had people from all over the country join us on those Zoom call. And we've also had people internationally join us on that monthly Zoom call. And it's a great way for quilters from different parts of the country, even different parts of the world, to just actually meet each other. Maybe not in person, but at least we get to talk to each other somewhat face to face. And I know that those who have joined, well, they keep coming back because, well, it's great to just talk to other quilters from around the country and around the world. With that being said, if you want to join us on the next Zoom call, well, just pay attention to the Treasure Heart Creations Facebook group, because I will be posting the information for the meeting there. And yeah, I'll keep you posted when the next one is too. So I guess there is some good and some bad to technology, but yeah, for whatever reason, that particular email message just didn't sit right with me, primarily because, well, again, this person whoever this company is just didn't do their homework about what this channel is all about. But put a comment down below. Let me know what you think about technology and the forms of communication. I mean, are we coming closer, or is the world getting smaller, or are we really just drifting apart further? The final and perhaps my favorite method of constructing this block is what I'm calling the strip and snowball method. It's very similar to the bar method with a few differences. The sides and the corners will be put together differently. In the bar method, we used half-square triangles in the corners, but in this method, we will be using two 2.5-inch by 8.5-inch strips of a print fabric and four 2.5-inch squares of a background for the sides of the block. For the center, we will still have that 4.5-inch square in which I have a white background, and I'll be using four 2.5-inch squares of that navy blue to snowball each of the corners. Now for this particular block, I'm going to put a ribbon, and I'm creating a flying geese unit using 2.5-inch squares of that turquoise fabric. Now if you're not putting a ribbon on your block, you will not need those extra 2.5-inch squares. And finally, we have two 2.5 by 4.5-inch rectangles of that same print fabric. The only thing unique about this method is the sides. You will use the 2.5-inch background squares to snowball the ends of the 2.5-inch by 8.5-inch strip. Make sure that you have the angle in the correct orientation. Otherwise, well, your block just won't look quite right. Most of the other parts to this block, well, we've already demonstrated them previously, so I won't repeat it here. Now, what I like about this particular method is, number one, it actually looks like a wreath, unlike some of the other blocks that I was doing. A few other things that I like about it, well, it's quick, and there's not a whole lot of individual pieces that you have to sew. Again, unlike the patchwork version. But what I don't like about this method, well, rather plain. I mean, I like a scrappy look, and so you can't really do that with this method because, again, you're using strips. Now, of course, I could have used different color strips. I guess that might be a way of scrapping it up. But, well, as you saw, this block in general just doesn't lend itself to being scrappy unless, well, you just get different fabrics that have the same color value. Now this method is very pre-cut friendly. I mean, it's just 2.5-inch strips cut at varying sizes. However, if you are using a charm pack, you probably don't want to use this method because, again, you need an 8.5-inch strip here on the side. But if you're using a layer cake or a jelly roll, you could do this method. Now remember, you choose the design and methods that you want to do, whether it's a 1 at a time half square triangle or the 8 at a time half square triangles, if you want to do the snowball and strip method, or if you just want to do a bunch of patchwork. It's your block, it's your quilt, you choose the method that you want to do. Now next week, get ready because we are going to do the stocking. So get your 2.5-inch squares all prepped up, and I'll see you next time. But until then, go out and create something.